So today I will be talking with Shri Sriram, who is an acclaimed bassist, composer, and arranger who has reshaped the boundaries of music by blending Indian classical music traditions with other genres such as electrona and jazz. His career is defined by a collaborative spirit and a versatile musical talent that makes him a sought-after creator across the international stage. Thank you so much for making time to speak with me, Shri.
No problem, yeah.
And learning about your journey will help me and other students have a more comprehensive understanding of musical careers and the paths that are available to us.
Superb.
So, for the first question, could you just give us a brief overview on how you started playing the bass and what inspired you to keep going?
Um, for me, I started studying tabla first, Indian classical tabla at the age of 4 or something like that, and kept that going for about 14 years. And when I was in my teens, I sort of got slightly tired of classical music, and it's sort of, it's predefined path, and I wanted to choose my own path. And just around then, I was listening to rock music, quite a lot of rock, and got into Black Sabbath quite heavily. And that's where I discovered bass. There was I was talking to a friend. I didn't even know what a bass was, and I was talking to a friend. I said, What's that sound at the back of?" And he said, "Oh, you mean the rhythm guitar?" I said, "No, behind that." And he was like, "Oh, that's the bass guitar." I was like, "That's what I want to play." So. And that's what sort of got me into bass, and it was it was a it, I'm self-taught on bass, and but having studied tabla for 14 years, I got the muscle control because of practicing tablas, and but also the idea of how to learn, like the how to take the first steps and how to progress from there. And honestly, it was I didn't even have the money to buy a bass, so in a week I had to learn up 20 rock songs and learn to play bass and learn 20 rock songs to play a concert, and the concert gave me money to buy a bass, my
Oh,
first
wow.
bass.
And after you started the bass, how quickly did you find your love for innovation, and when did you start composing and arranging your own music?
So when I found when I started with bass, and I sort of first did rock music, and then interestingly, my idea of rock was more. It was not straight ahead rock. It was like starting with things like Led Zeppelin and things like that, and which are a bit more experimental, bit more creative. And it led me to a band called Rush from Canada, and which was just like the bass playing is insane on Geddy Lee's playing is out of this world, um, and from Rush, it was a very natural transition to Weather Report, which is the god of all bass players, who's Jaco Pastorius, who plays in that band. And that's when I realized this feeling. And I started from rock. I moved to kind of playing more jazz then. And my drummer at the time, Dennis Coilo, from Bombay, who I sort of grew up with, he used to go and tell me you should compose, and I was like, nah, I'm not a composer really, it's like. And one day he literally in the band room, he literally said, "Okay, I'm locking the door, I'm locking you in the room, I'm going out, and here's a cup of tea, and when you write a piece, knock on the door, I'll open it again," kind of thing. And he just went away. And I was like, ah, come on, man. And anyway, I sat there in about 5 minutes. I had a composition, one a part for a keyboard, part for a bass, part for the drums, a melody, a bridge, a chorus. And I said, yeah, okay, here you go. And the keyboard player and he came in, and they played it, and they were like, oh wow, this is fantastic. And that was it. I never stopped composing from there. And when I started composing, I realize it now, but at that time I didn't see it in the same way. But it's a superpower. It's composition. It's like someone who can cook or someone who can build a building. It's like imagine, I mean, we go to a building, we buy a house, and we don't know how that building was made. We just live in it and we say nice building. But imagine if you could build a whole building, you can build it exactly the way you want. And like everything, they say the word rocket science. They say it's not rocket science. Rocket science also starts with 1 + 1 = 2. That's where it starts, and then you end up becoming a scientist. But in the same way, I discovered that suddenly I can do what I want. And more importantly, I was trying to emulate Jaco Pastorius, and I wanted to be like Jaco Pastorius. And then I just realized, why do I need to be like him? Why can't I be like myself?
Mm.
Because, and that was a very early realization. I mean, around when I was 19 years old, and it became like, let me see what I find, because obviously he came from somewhere and he listened to other bass, but he listened to Paul McCartney all the time, and but he doesn't sound like Paul McCartney, and I realized I don't want to sound like Jaco Pastorius, because then I would be second. There would be Jaco Pastorius, and I would be like Jaco Pastorius. And and then I realized I had a natural wealth of Indian classical music around me because I'd studied it, and I started it was very natural for me to incorporate those ideas into my music. And because I also grew up listening to Indian classical music, Indian folk music, and Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake at the same time. It was like, so
Yeah.
even when I was listening to Swan Lake, I would hear it played on a sitar, or I'd hear a flute line in it, or a tabla part, and I just started bringing those elements in to composition, and that's where sort of the whole, it was not a very conscious. I never said I'm going to be innovative, I'm going to be unique, I'm going to find my own voice. But I had a driving force in me that I want to do my thing, and um, I don't want to do what you do. I want to do what I do. And even though I appreciate what you do or what another musician does, but it was very important for me to be me. And yeah, and just along the way, experiences, I spent some time trying to play trombone. I tried to play saxophone. I tried to play sarod. I tried to play all, and then I started Indian classical violin for a while. But the violin is, really small and delicate, and the bass is big and brutal. And I couldn't keep both going, and so I stopped violin. But the bow was lying around, and I thought, what if, I bow the bass with and suddenly I realized, I need to change the shape of the bass, because that's when I'll be able to bow it. And I ended up designing and making my own bass from scratch, and that sort of naturally led me to become this innovative musician. And of course, then I had tabla. And as a tabla player, you're tapping things all the time. And I thought, what if I played tabla on the bass, And so that became another form. So, along the way, things just develop. Even my flute playing, I just learned flute on my own. And but then I heard Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, who would do all those kind of things, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to incorporate that." And then I heard some other flautist doing sa, when he played his notes, and then I thought of throat boxing, like beatboxing, but throat boxing while I'm playing the flute. So and suddenly when I look at me now, I just think like, oh my God, there's so many different techniques and innovations, but it just happened naturally.
That's so cool. Um, and in learning all of these instruments, for different amounts of time, how much practice did you have to do throughout your childhood, adolescence, early adulthood? And how did you kind of balance that with other aspects of life, such as school, family, work?
Hmm. I'm not the best example for this, but I when I started playing bass, I decided to get into because at the time when I wanted to be Jaco Pastorius, I once I got into this practicing 13 hours a day. It was just start with the metronome at 50 in the morning, and by night, and metronome is at 160, 170, and I'm like doing scales. And I would go on stage and play concerts, and as a bass player, all my you know the bass, right? As an instrument. And as a bass player, instead of playing down here, I was playing up here, really
Mm,
fast things. And and I thought I was great, but people didn't think so. I mean, I would go and play a little bit of flute, and they'd say, "Oh man, that flute playing is so beautiful," because I know nothing about flute. I just played.
mm,
And so after that week of practice, I just realized I'm killing any creativity I have in my head, and I stopped practicing completely. And yes, I have done finger exercises and stuff like that a little bit, but what I realized is every time I pick up an instrument, I have to feel like the best way to put it is like a baby who's found candy for the first time, and it's like, whoa, what is that? It's amazing, and I'm like that even now with my instrument and with any instrument, and I just like the magic of music. I find music to be magical. I hate it to be theoretical. I hate it to be um, you must do this or you must. I mean, it's. I had a debate with my niece some time ago, and she was also studying music, and she was like, but would if you studied harmony and theory, wouldn't you? Because I write for film, right? Sometimes, and she said, wouldn't it help you to see a scene and instantly know what chord to go for or what scale to go for? And I said, no, I want the scene to tell me what to play. And it could be a sad scene, but I might want to play something pretty on top of it. I don't know. And that's what people like Quentin Tarantino do, It's like there's someone stabbing someone in the film, but there's like this gorgeous piece of music at the back, It's like to create that counterpoint. And so I didn't practice much, but I played a lot. So I don't know whether that is considered practice, but I used to play all the time. School, I just about cleared my bachelor's in science, and as a good Indian, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree. But 1 month before my final exams, I had the biggest gig of my life. The gig that set me up as an international musician at a jazz festival in Bombay, and I just put my studies my chemistry to one side, and I just focused on the gig. I somehow managed to clear. I was to my surprise, I managed to clear my bachelor's, but by then I already knew I was not interested in further studies at all, and I'd suddenly become a musician. And so it was work. I have never worked a day in my life except for on my own music and on briefs, on advertising, on composing. Thankfully, I've been very lucky and to still be surviving without having done a regular job. So it's been music all the time. And when it's not music, I'm cooking or cleaning the house or going for a walk in the park. So it's I don't make a big deal of music, but music is everything and everything is music. So it's a bit like that.
that's so interesting. Yeah, a lot of the people that I know who have been musicians have talked a lot about their many hours, like 12, 13 hours of practice in a day and then very few performances. So it's interesting to see how you have been mostly performing with little practice.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I mean, you have to work on the tune. You have to, and if I write something a bit complicated, I have to figure out how to play it. I have to, so that is a form of practice. But you know how, it's like there's a difference between going for a walk, a leisurely walk for 1 hour, and there's a difference in exercising for 1 hour. So the intention of exercise is very different from going for a walk, and I think your calories burn in different ways with each one. And I think with the intention of practice is a completely different thing. So I also realized if I'm not trying to play like Jaco Pastorius, I don't need to practice as much as Jaco Pastorius. If I want to play like me, anything is me. It could be one note that I play very beautifully, and I don't need any practice for that one note, you know. I do play more than one note, but yeah, so it's I have everything is performance. Even now in my studio, if I pick up my bass, it becomes a performance. And I'm instantly creating something new, or I'm playing one of my own tunes or something like that.
And when you're creating, do you have I know you talked a little bit about like when you're writing for film, you see the scene and then you just go from there. But do you have any pre-existing ideas for when you sit down to write a piece for yourself that, oh, I want to write a piece about a certain feeling or a certain thing, or you just sit down and do it?
So yes, I do. Um, in fact, recently, what's happened is I mean, write is a technical word. I mean, is a theoretical word for me because I don't read or write music. And so writing means composing for me, and on my instrument or on a keyboard or whatever, you know. Um, what happens is, yes, sometimes I feel like, oh, I want to write a tough, you know, like a strong piece, or I want a piece that is challenging, or I want to write a piece that's fast, or I want to write a beautiful ballad. I do have those kind of pre-existing thoughts. Though what's started happening to me now is sometimes I would get onto composition, and I have this idea I want to create, right? This beautiful tune. So I think this beautiful tune. And I would start with programming the drums for that tune. And then I'd get bored of my drum programming, and then the tune would disappear because I'm no more interested in making that composition. So what's started happening now recently is I just sing a composition into my phone. And this may sound very, very odd, but a lot of my compositions come to me when I'm in the toilet. You know, it's like, so I always have my phone with me, and I just, just hum something or tell myself something, or I could say do dee do dee okay, and remember to do that, and put a B flat there, and put an F there, and put, do something interesting. And then when I go to actually put that composition down, it works, you know. So yes, so I do have pre-existing thoughts when I go to compose. Sometimes I just get on the instrument and see what the instrument wants to tell me, you know. Mm.
And when you're composing, is there a specific time and process that you use, or is it whenever you have the time or whenever you feel like it?
Whenever I feel like. It could be on a train. It could be when I'm walking. It could be sometimes in the middle of my sleep. I suddenly have this tune in my head, and I just whisper it into my phone and go back to sleep. And um, No, there's no time or process. I don't have a 9 to 5, or um, I don't. Some people work only at night. Some people work early in the morning. It could be any time.
And how did being in a band and collaborating with other musicians shape your experiences and perspectives, both in performing and in composing?
Massively. It first, when I'm collaborating with people I like, and people with who have got mutual respect. I mean, I respect them, they respect me. There's an immediate exchange of ideas. It's not about me playing their tune or they, and it doesn't even matter who wrote the tune. And every note you hear, whether you hear it on an album, or whether you hear it being played by a collaborator in a studio, influences you in some way. And so if it's a bit like, if I play alone, as I've done. I have created a solo bass album, which is a completely different process. It's actually more frightening than collaborating with someone, because if I play a note and someone plays a note against that on a saxophone, for example, I'm like, oh, okay, so then I can go there, and he goes somewhere else, and or she goes somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I should go there. So that's what is great about collaboration. And I would never ever say I am who I am because of me. It's I am who I am because of all the influences from around me, and from listening, from working with people, good people, you know. Mm.
And how did your passion and talent in music shape other aspects of your life, such as like disciplines or interests?
Disciplines. I'm very self-motivated. I didn't know that till my wife told me a few years ago that I'm an extremely self-motivated person. So if I have nothing to do in the day, or if I've had no work for a while or something like that, it doesn't matter. I get up and I just feel like, oh, today I want to write a piece of music, and so it's not always for a specific end result. So I think that is the discipline. I also work. I'm very, I believe in using maximum brain power or soul power, whichever power you call it, to write music for just for that time when it's working at its best, you know. So I don't work 10 hours a day. For me, sometimes a composition, I could just go into a studio for 30 minutes and and I'm done. In 30 minutes, I'm like, I've said everything I have to say, go away, you know, and then I come back again and it feels fresh and I jump into it again. So it's like I work very, very sporadically, except if I'm editing something or doing something very technical, then I can work 10 hours, you know, in a straight, just sitting and doing that technical job.
Can you share a particularly challenging or transformative moment in your musical journey that influenced your development as a bassist or composer?
Oh, there've been so many, but one of the most important ones. Um, So I was discovered in Bombay by this English guy, right? I grew up in Bombay and which what's called Mumbai now, and this English guy came and found me through some. I had a cassette that was out at that time, my first album. He heard it, he loved my playing, he invited me to England, and that's how I ended up coming to England. So my second job in England was working with a contemporary dancer, and I was invited by Yorkshire Dance Centre, and so it's a very long story, but I'll try and say it super quick. It's like I was creating a piece of music, a very abstract piece of music, alone with my bass and all detuned, and you know just tapping the bass at different places, and she was doing a very difficult dance. You know, it's like it's almost like yoga, her dance. It's like very we worked together for a month and she was extremely happy with it, and I came to England again for that job, and when we and at the Yorkshire Dance Centre I used to and by then I had fallen out with her big time. I couldn't even talk to her anymore, but we were still working together, right? And it was important for me to do that job, and it was so every morning, just to calm myself down, I would go 2 hours early to the Yorkshire Dance Centre and just play alone, you know, just put on the amp and just play. And on the day when it came to presenting the piece to the people who are employing me, um, she suddenly turned around and said, I can't stand this music. I'd rather dance to the Beatles, you know. And my I thought my world collapsed, you know, because this is it. I'm 21 years old or 24 years old, and this is my big opportunity, and my opportunity is about to just vanish, you know. And so I was, as you can imagine, very, very distraught. And I packed up my stuff and I left from there. I didn't even talk to the guy who invited me, Simon. I didn't even talk to him. I just left. I was walking around on the street wondering what to do. And, you know, oh, my life is over. I have to go back to India. You know, it's, and all that kind of stuff. And this Simon comes in his car and he finds me walking on the way. And he says, "Where the hell are you? Get in the car," you know. So I jumped in the car and you know, quite tearfully, I'm telling him, "Oh, you know, this dancer didn't like me, and it's over." He said, "Can I tell you something? Every day when you came 2 hours early to play on your own, everyone in the office started coming 2 hours early, and they would just sit in the building and listen to me playing. The whole building could hear me playing." And he said, everyone absolutely loves what you do. In fact, they think the dancer's wrong in what she did, you know? And that changed me completely. It gave me power, you know? I realized that my instinct is right. Um, and instinct is everything in life, you know? And my instinct is right. And suddenly I emerged from being the scared person saying, "Oh, do you like what I do?" To becoming this, boom, I'm going to give you me, and that was mega mega transformative, and sort of it showed on stage, and we did 5 performances together, and the journalists would always come and talk to me after that, and critics, and they used to always tell me, "Oh, you should meet this one, you should meet that one, you should meet that one, you should work with them." And that's what made my career happen, basically, in the UK. Hmm.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Welcome. Mhm.
And this is the last question.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to aspiring young musicians who are hoping to achieve success in the field of producing and composing music?
I would only have the most important piece of advice. I work with a lot of young people too nowadays, I'm as a mentor. And what I've realized is just what happened to me about Jaco Pastorius, and realizing I don't want to become Jaco Pastorius because there already is a Jaco Pastorius. Finding your own unique voice is what will, and there's no guarantee for success anyway. Imagine, I don't know, let's name a famous singer, Adele, let's say Adele, right? If you sang like Adele, doesn't mean you'll be successful, because there is already Adele. And someone will say, "Oh, look at her or him sounds a bit like Adele." But if I sound like me, there's always, I mean, not like me, like yourself. There's more chance for success. There's more, because someone, even yourself as a listener, and sorry, just to jump in, the uniqueness is when you're composing your own music and when you're producing your own music. But if you want to be a great classical violinist, for example, and you want to be principal violinist of the New York Symphony or whatever, then you have to do what is meant to be done to get to that point. But even there, you have people who are unique and do things in different ways. And do you think Bach or Mozart or Stravinsky or any of them went in the prescribed way? No, they were all rebels. They all went against the system. They all said, "You know what? You do it that way. I don't believe in it. I will do it my own way." And now we revere them as great composers and try to do exactly as they said. But it's very important to be, yeah. So the bottom line is to absolutely be yourself. Find your voice. Say something that you want to say, and there is more chance of success, and the success will be yours and not anyone else's.
Thank you so much. This is so insightful. It was great to hear your experiences and journeys, and I really hope that other people can benefit from listening to this as much as I do.
I certainly hope so, and I think it's been lovely talking to you, and great questions.